So this next introduction is actually very interesting for me. I am an atheist and a member of the growing Child Free by Choice movement. But I'm also a very big believer in getting everyone on board with the sustainability movement. So it is my pleasure to introduce someone who is also working in clean energy, but comes from a very, very different world from me. Reverend Mitchell Hescox is the president of the Evangelical Environmental Network, or EEN. He speaks nationally on creation care, clean energy, and climate change. The EEN represents over 2 million pro-life Christians who have taken action in support of a clean energy future. He has testified before Congress, spoken at the White House, and the Council for Foreign Relations. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Mitchell Hescox for his presentation about the faith-based community and a low-carbon future.
Thank you. I don't know how to stand behind a podium and talk, so I'm going to stand out here, and if it wasn't for the speakers being over there and getting feedback, I'd probably walk to the tables. But I want to start this presentation off by telling you a story that's happened to me at least 60 times. As you heard, I travel all over the country and sometimes the world and talking to evangelical Christians. And I often fly on an airline that doesn't have seat assignments, and I won't say anymore because you probably know who I'm talking about. And since I fly so much, I'm, have the possibility of getting an earlier boarding time. And so I go on and I, grab my window seat, and hopefully it's in the exit row for my long legs, but sometimes it's not. And usually, one of those millennials who forgot to register or doesn't want to pay the extra money gets to sit beside me in a center seat. And as I said, this has happened more than 60 times. You'll finally start chatting with somebody in the airplane, and usually somebody will ask, well, what do you do? Well, I say I'm an evangelical environmentalist, and they say, what in the hell are you talking about? Because there is this stereotype in our community, and some rightly so, that there's been a pushback, and they are the hardest community to reach, in my opinion, in the United States on what we call creation care, because we believe God created it and we're commanded to care for it. But I'd like to do a little test with you right now. If you or a member of your family have asthma, would you stand up and remain standing? Asthma. If you have asthma, stand up. Or someone in your family. If you have someone that has ADHD in your family, would you please stand up? Or autism. Or severe allergies. This is probably one of the smallest groups I've ever had do this, but look around the room, it's probably about half. That's not uncommon. You may sit down now, because 1 in 3 children in the United States have asthma, autism, ADHD, or severe allergies, all related to petrochemicals and fossil fuels. And ladies, if you really want to do something really scary to me, the National Cancer Institute announced last April that from 2015 to 2030, the incidence of breast cancer is going to go up 30% in the United States. The cause? Not completely determined, but probably environmental and probably synthetic hormones being released by plastics. If you wonder why I did that, I do that to almost every congregation that I speak in. And myself and my team have spoken in well over 1,000 churches in the past 5-6 years since I became president of EEN. And when you get people to look around the room and see that their kids and their families are affected by something, it starts to change and open their hearts. And it's what we call values-based messaging. And while EEN didn't create it, we modified it. In fact, if you want to know more about it, I would invite you to read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind. Some of you may have read it. You can watch a TED Talk if you don't want to read the book. And it's kind of interesting. Senator Worth I think is probably outside, but last fall I was invited to go to Park City to a thing of how to reach conservatives for the sustainable development goals, the new ones coming out, that came out last year. And guess what this great big communication firm had talked about? The righteous mind and the types of words and choices. And basically what it says is people receive information by 6 different ways, and conservatives identify with some, and liberals identify with some, and there's some common things. And it sort of makes sense that people, you have to reach people through the values that they hold most dear. In fact, to give you an example, you may know, and you'll see it later, that I have a book coming out, and this second chapter is entitled, It's Not About Polar Bears. One of the things that's hurt people in the conservative view is the iconic vision that the polar bear is the representative of climate change. Because while people might think polar bears are cute, most people don't have a personal connection to a polar bear. And it was really funny, a couple months ago I was doing a TV interview, and just as I started to talk, they screened up in front of me polar bears talking about climate change, and I just literally started to laugh on camera, and then I had to tell them the story. Because traditionally, from the enviro world, and it's changed now in the past couple of years because of what's happening, but climate change was often seen as a future event involving polar bears and involving left-wing politicians. And I tell people quite honestly, and it's one of my great lines that was quoted in the New York Times, that, climate change is not about Al Gore. It's literally about following, in my case, Jesus Christ. And it's not about polar bears, but it's caring about our children now. In fact, recent research just pointed out too, a guy just confirmed this from this study, and you can see it up there on the screen. And I'd like to real quickly, because I want to save time. I'm already through 10 minutes already, so I have 10 minutes left to go. Thank you. I almost had a heart attack. I know I'm an evangelical and usually speak for 45 or 50, but I'm trying to do this in 15. I'm going to go real quickly through 5 ways, if you want to connect with people who aren't from your tribe, that you should think about. The first thing is know what is most important. And in my community, being pro-life is very important between us and the Catholic communities. For us, we define pro-life as being from conception to natural death. It's a whole life ethic. It's the same ethic that the National Association of Evangelicals has, which I'm on the board of directors. It's the same whole life ethic of the Roman Catholic Church. The second thing, so talk about if you go to a community, and I don't urge you, unless you're an evangelical, don't try to go to an evangelical church because you'll be seen as a phony. But people respond when they know it's coming from someone from their tribe, using their values. And so talk about how many kids have asthma in their town. In Pennsylvania, I talk a lot about Lyme disease because Pennsylvania has the highest incidence of Lyme disease in the country. And if you don't know, according to CDC, Lyme disease has spread in the northeastern United States in the past 5 years, 320% geographically. Why? Warmer springs, warmer falls. Simple things to think about to get people active to realize it's a current problem. It's a real problem. Second, tie it to their scripture, their faith, the biblical tradition. For my rabbi friend back there, one of the most powerfully effective verses in the entire Bible about creation care on the negative side is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 24. Paraphrasing it, human beings destroy the earth because they don't follow God's commandments. And I often tell people, you really need to know that those commandments are in your favorite books of the Bible, of the Hebrew Scriptures. And you should all know them because they're very clear. And if you are a person of faith, you'll know that most people don't read Leviticus or Numbers, which are most of the ways to talk about crop rotation and handling the earth and handling animals. And that's what Isaiah is referring to, is that people were already destroying the land then. But if it belongs to God, we have a responsibility to care from it. Genesis 2:15, we are called to tend the garden. And I could talk all about that. So First is value system, touch their hearts. Touch their hearts, their minds with their faith system, using the scriptures, the call that, we're called to renew the earth. In our scriptures, John 1, the earth, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word created all things. Creation to do it. Third, give them something to do that they can do. Most conservatives, faith people included, don't like to think that the only person that can solve a problem is big industry or especially big government. And by the way, because of 2008 and 2009, don't point to the references of financial institutions recommending that climate change has to be done. It is a non-starter. But talk to people about energy efficiency. Talk about rescuing their families or church members in extreme weather, community gardens, food waste. And while they themselves are not the final answer, if you get people engaged in solving a problem, then they're open to solving bigger problems. And that's when you can start talking policy issues. And lastly, but not least, the fifth thing is you have to describe hope. Paint a vision of what you want to see 20 years from now. I talk about my grandkids coming to visit me in all-electric cars, having great jobs provided by a sustainable energy economy. And the list goes on and on of the things that you can talk to people about. And so why is that important? And I'm going to rush through the rest of it really quick so we can do some questions. Politically and nationally, if you don't know, evangelical Christians are the largest single voting bloc in the United States. 26% of the people that voted in the last two presidential elections and the last two midterms, 26% again were evangelicals. 78% of them voted Republican. Pro-life Catholics represent another 19, so 45% of the populace of the United States who vote, have similar views. And that's why we started the Pro-Life Clean Energy campaign. It just started in the year. It's one of the things we've done. And I'm going to rush through this, and we can go back and talk to it during questions. Hopefully I can talk. The Pro-Life Energy campaign starts off with freeing our children from pollution. To sack off, most of us are conservatives, so we want to talk about energy freedom. Again, that's a key buzzword. Never talk about energy choice to somebody from my community. Never. Because it's immediately turned into something else. But talk about freedom. Talk about saving your kids from going to war. I happen to be the father of a son who did 2 tours to Afghanistan. I know what it's like to send a child off to war. I've seen retired Marine generals cry, sitting at a table with me, talking how they never want to send one of our military personnel in harm's way again because of climate change. Those are true and real facts today. Just as an example, in the past 4 months, so these are just a couple states that we've worked in, looked at 50,000 people almost in Texas have signed this pledge. Texas, by the way, over 65% of Republicans in Texas like clean energy. We're mirroring that. 40,000 in Ohio, 20,000 in Indiana, and the list goes on, and we're just gearing up in Missouri and Arizona right now. We can reach evangelical Christians to be part of the solution. But the thing that I like to caution before we have 1 minute of questions is the fact that you don't see me working with Michael and the Sierra Club openly. It's not that I don't respect their work, but I immediately become branded by my own community and those on the far right that would want to deny who I am. So we call it walking together separately. And so with that, I am going to take a couple questions because I'm just about out of time. And I'm happy to see anything more about it. And my shameless plug is the book is now, I finished the proofs last week, so it will be there with, again, Paul Douglas is a meteorologist from Minneapolis and on my board, and also an evangelical Christian. So questions real quick.
What you were saying there about the messenger being important,
Yes.
someone like yourself is likely to have more impact with Republican legislators who ultimately were going to need to get climate legislation, and particularly in carbon pricing. Can you say something about who you're speaking to in that field and how you're getting on with that?
I'm not going to mention names, but let's say that I have 15 Republican senators in Washington that I have a constant dialogue with. In fact, if there is a blessing to the Trump candidacy, I had a lot of people call me like Reuters last week and say if I was going to go to the big meeting with Trump yesterday, the evangelical leaders. And I said, with what I've said about Donald Trump and my stance on climate change, I don't think I'll be going, and obviously I didn't. But I can tell you that thanks to Donald Trump, there are Republicans running towards clean energy and then climate change in the Senate and in the House because they know they're in trouble if they don't change the party. So there's a great number of people that are doing it. The first thing we're going to work on is clean energy because that's the easiest, and especially the thing that I see that's going to happen first is increased funding for the Department of Energy and other people, and then other things. I eventually want to get rid of tax subsidies. And Lamar Alexander, who's handed, would help me do that if we could rewrite the tax code. One more question, and then I think we're about done, right?
I think I'm up. Hi, John Kostiak, Wind Energy Foundation. Thank you so much for this great work. I do want to ask you more about Trump. It's funny you brought him up. A surprising number, at least to me, of evangelicals came out and voted for him. He didn't have much nice things to say about clean energy, climate, or many of the other issues that I care about. And I'm wondering how you can explain that, that trend.
I think a lot of people have tried to explain it. I can know from some evangelical pollsters that there's no doubt that a fairly good percent of people that do go to pretty strong white evangelical churches have come out to vote for Trump, sort of the far right. That said, most of the leadership that I know of any evangelical churches, except those in the far right, like Franklin Graham, who just said it a few hours ago, would not support. In fact, every day I hear my friends talk about how to do it. The Christian Coalition of Alabama took out ads throughout the South against Trump in the southern primaries. So most evangelicals aren't going to vote for Trump, but there will be. And the stereotypical person that's voting for Trump, and I don't think it's no surprise, is the people that I've met are people that are primarily white evangelicals, extremely afraid because their life has changed. They're part of the fundamentalist movement that's happened worldwide. Is when change happens so quick and people can't identify with it, they retreat to fear and fundamentalism. And so whether you're Christian or Arab, Muslim or whatever, you react out of that. And that fear is what's driving it. And so we have to offer hope in offering a new future. And with that, they're going to throw me off the stage. So I'll be around. Please talk to me and be happy to answer any questions at all. Thank you so much.